welcome everybody again to our ongoing series of INTERPHEX Live, the virtual version. As everybody knows that's on, this is usually conducted in the Crystal Palace at the Javits Center through the efforts of Read Exhibits. We are here and we continue. So without further ado, we're going to talk with my old friend Joe McGinnis here. One of the points that we do every year is to revisit areas that are of high interest and areas that are ongoing and there's new information. And needless to say, in these days and times, there is a lot of information. So Joe, I mean, a lot of people are talking about staying home, work from home. And obviously the agency and the inspectorate and everybody is dealing with the same thing. But I think there's a misunderstanding or there's a lack of information, or perhaps we can enlighten folks as to how hard the agency's been doing things. And, we can start with that. I mean, currently, where are we with inspections and the new normal here? I mean, why don't we start with that one, Joe? Oh, and by the way, this is Joe McGinnis, Senior Director of Regulatory Compliance. Sorry, Joe, haven't been working with you for so many years. I almost forgot to say that. And Joe's a former FDA inspector, and then currently with J&J. So, Joe, I think okay, so why don't we start where we talked about the other day and give people a sense of, hey, it's the new normal is you're not supposed to go places, but guess what? There are options. And why don't we start with that and we can talk about those options like we did. All right?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Russ. Thank you very much for having me on today. I appreciate it as always. And the pleasure is mine to be here. As you mentioned, I was with the FDA for 21 years. I started out as an investigator for 6 years, and then a compliance officer, and then was the director of the compliance branch in New Jersey District before retiring and coming to Johnson & Johnson about 5 years ago. And this pandemic has certainly been an interesting time to live in. I tell my kids that they're living in history here. And it's affected everybody, and the FDA is no exception. The investigators, from what I understand, are not furloughed. They're still working, but they're working from home and not doing inspections or sample collections or whatnot as they normally would do. One of the tools, as you mentioned, that they're using is the Staff Manual Guide number 9004.1. You can get to this guide very easily going to the FDA website, www.fda.gov. Click on the search button and type in 9004.1 and it'll come right up. And this staff manual guide will tell you all about the agency's ability to request documents in advance of or in lieu of an inspection. And the typical documents that would be requested would be general documents, organizational charts, what products do you manufacture, what's your address, what's your GPS location, those types of general questions, and then more specific questions along the 6-system way of doing an inspection. There's the laboratory system, there's the materials system, production system, packaging system, and these questions would be asked remotely and sent to you on a form 4003 is the form number. And when you read the staff manual guide, the request needs to be fulfilled within 14 calendar days, 30 days if the documents need to be translated, but within 14 calendar days, you need to reply to the request for records. It's something that the agency has implemented fairly recently. It's only been in place since August of 2017. This wasn't available when I was with the agency. This staff manual guide was only when I was with the agency was only used in public health emergencies. So now this ability to request records in advance of or in lieu of an inspection is really a nice tool that the agency has in this type of environment.
So, Joe, what would initiate this? So it could be a submission, it could be, submission pending. It could be, you know, pending 30 days. I mean, is it, what precipitates my need to go, okay, I need to look at the staff manual, because is it anything that would customarily result in the FDA knocking on my door? Is that the way I should look at this?
Well, it could be, you know, the request is in advance of or in lieu of an inspection, but what you will see when you read the staff manual guide is that, you know, this can help the agency inform inspection planning, prepare for a scheduled inspection, inform FDA's decision to adjust the interval between on-site inspections, and it also can be used, as I say, in lieu of an inspection. So when you read the staff manual guide, these are illuminated for you.
I see. And the 4003, that is what actually shows up on my doorstep as for what the shopping list is, or?
Yes, that's the form number. You know, the questions would be coming on that form number. You know, similar to, you know, FDA has a form 482, which is the inspectional, you know, document that's presented at the beginning of an inspection. An FDA 43, form 43 is the observations. This is just another, you know, type of document, 4003.
Okay, so how does that, then is that handled through the branch, the inspectorate branches, or how does who creates it and how does it get? So if I'm sitting in East Hanover, New Jersey,
right?
How does that work?
Well, if you're in East Hanover, New Jersey, you, after the agency reorganized, right, a few years ago, there's 4 pharmaceutical divisions. From Maine down to Virginia and out to Cincinnati is Pharmaceutical Division 1, and that's headed by a woman, Diana Amador. Pharmaceutical Division 2 goes from Virginia down to Puerto Rico and out to Dallas, Texas, and that's Pharmaceutical Division number 2. Pharmaceutical Division number 3 goes from Detroit all the way up to Minneapolis, down to St. Louis and out to Colorado. That's Pharmaceutical Division 3, and that's headed by Art Sabaniak. And Pharmaceutical Division number 4, headed by Stephen Porter, goes from Colorado out to California. So the 4 divisions are now in play for pharmaceuticals. Instead of the old way of having 20 district offices, now there's 4 pharmaceutical divisions. So you will likely get a request for records on form 4003 from one of these 4 pharmaceutical divisions. So if you're in Hanover, New Jersey, then you would get it from Pharmaceutical Division number 1.
Right, and the trigger for that again would be either a submission or a request for a review, or
Well,
what?
Again, we mentioned the 4 reasons in the staff manual guide before. So this could be, you know, to prepare the agency for a scheduled inspection. It could be just to inform inspection planning for the agency. It could be used in lieu of an inspection, or inform FDA's decision to adjust the interval between on-site inspections. Those are the 4 that are mentioned in the staff manual guide.
So I would suspect the guys, the inspectors, they got to be busy as heck. I mean, I can't believe that people aren't availing themselves of this. So what is your sense of it, Joe? I mean, are people jumping on this, and it's business as usual, or what's the sense here?
My sense is this is one of many things that the investigators are doing, right? As I said, they're not furloughed, right? When there's a government budget concern, sometimes the government employees will be furloughed. Of course, that wouldn't happen to the commissioned officers that are employed. They don't get furloughed. But you know, in these times, it's a perfect opportunity for agency employees to get caught up on their training, to do certainly mission critical work will continue to be done. Every investigator is fitted, you know, for a respirator annually as part of their training, and certainly any mission critical work could still continue. Most of the Public Health Service commissioned officers were deployed, as I understand it, for the pandemic. So they were away from their usual position and duty stations. I was a commissioned officer for 20 years and was deployed, for example, down to Hurricane Katrina and Rita for a couple of weeks and helped out down there during that emergency. So the commissioned officers were deployed. Other work that the investigators could do besides online training, they could do recall audit checks remotely. I'm going to get into a warning letter review. The warning letters are posted on the agency's website, and something very interesting that comes out at you fairly quickly when you look at the data is in 2019, there were 102 warning letters issued in all areas: food, drugs, devices, CBER, CVM, tobacco. In second quarter 2020, right, which we are still in, the agency operates on a fiscal year, and the second quarter would end June 30th. So we still have a few more days to finish up the second quarter. But as of now, there was 179 warning letters posted on the agency's warning letter page, as compared to 102 that occurred in second quarter 2019. So it's up 77 warning letters. So where is all of this work done? As I said, some of the investigators have been doing other things as they are at home, and it appears that some of them are helping with compliance work, perhaps. The number of unapproved misbranded drugs, 505A charges, went up significantly. There were 66 505A warning letters posted as of this morning on the agency's website. And in second quarter 2019, there were only 2 issued in the entire second quarter. So that's an area where the agency has certainly increased their output. Tobacco warning letters also. There were 49 tobacco warning letters issued so far in second quarter, and in second quarter 2019 there were only 20 issued. As far as drug warning letters, there were 34 drug warning letters in 2019. So far there's only 10 in second quarter 2020. 6 of those are foreign and 4 are domestic. And in 2019, 10 were foreign and 24 were domestic, just to compare apples and apples here, year over year. So again, the number of warning letters went up, certainly 505A, unapproved misbranded drug warning letters, as well as the tobacco warning letters went up. So, the investigators, when I was employed with the agency, we used to bring the investigators over to the compliance branch and give them details. Sometimes the detail would be a 30-day detail as an acting compliance officer. Sometimes we would extend that up to 90, even 180 days. And it gives the investigators a chance to do different work and learn the compliance side of things. We have the investigation branch and the compliance branch, in each of the district offices. And it appears that perhaps some of the investigators are doing some compliance work.
Joe, you brought up a good point there, and that's something I know you and I touched on when we were doing our prep work, and that is the foreign dimension here. And it sounds to me, maybe we should touch on that. You were saying something about the moratorium there.
Well, there is a moratorium on inspections, unless it's a mission critical inspection. Inspections, both domestically and foreign, have been put on hold. There has been no announcement on when these are going to be reoccurring, but that's both domestic and foreign. And one of the things that I'm thinking about as I'm talking to you, Russ, is the agency's obligation to meet PDUFA dates and GDUFA dates. And the Prescription Drug User Fee Act has been in place since 1992. It's reauthorized every 5 years, and and there's performance goals that need to be met. I have not read anything about the COVID-19 effect on these performance goals, but certainly that's something probably on the top of the agency's list, is to make sure that they meet their PDUFA and GDUFA as well as other performance goals.
But I think it's important, again, for the folks that's listening. I mean, the PDUFA is a contractual agreement, as we had discussed. I mean, this is nothing that can be taken lightly. It's surprising that there isn't any information surrounding that, or at least something that we haven't found yet.
Yeah, I haven't read anything on it, but certainly every year, the agency has a priority to meet their PDUFA dates. And I'll just read one of them. You can get all of this information on the FDA website. If you go to fda.gov, type in PDUFA drug user fee amendments. I'm not telling you anything differently here than what you'll read when you do this. If you type in PDUFA drug user fee amendments, and then click on the reauthorization activities section, and then go to PDUFA 6, which is now the 6th commitment. You'll see the proposed commitment letter, which is 46 pages long, and it has all of the PDUFA performance goals. And one of the first performance goals is the agency needs to review and act on 90% of standard new molecular entity NDAs and original BLA submissions within 10 months of the 60-day filing date. That's one of the performance goals in the PDUFA 6 proposed commitment letter. And you can read that letter online, as I described.
And the same thing exists for the generic aspect as well, correct?
Same thing. GDUFA came into play in 2012 and was reauthorized in 2017. Every 5 years, the GDUFA needs to be reauthorized, and it was. And now they're on similar schedule. PDUFA and GDUFA will be re-reviewed in 2022 for reauthorization by Congress.
That's got to be a mountain of work, Joseph. That's got to be a lot of work in the GDUFA.
It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of important work.
Yes.
And like I said, that's high on the agency's list, and it always has been.
No, I understand. Yeah, I think everybody appreciates that. Well, I think perhaps people forget that, but I think that hasn't changed. I mean, the point there is the clock still ticks, people still wait, and agencies still has to take action. So, I mean, that's an important aspect. And as far as business as usual, Joe, I mean, though I assume the labs are still operating and stuff like that?
I believe the agency laboratories are operating and analyzing product, yes.
Okay. So I think let's just step back a minute. Let's just say, for example, let's go back to what we were talking about with. So if I'm sitting someplace in Central Jersey, and I have a filing pending. Okay, so when they craft the 4003, I mean, I don't expect you to know all the details, Joe, but I mean, in principle, if I have made a filing, I mean, what kind of steps would the inspectorate branch go through to craft the 4003? What references or information are they given from the center, for example?
And that's a great question, Russ. And every request could be tailored appropriately to fit the needs of that request. So if it's just a general, request, then the questions would be very similar to what you would get initially when an investigator walks in the front door. Who's the most responsible person at this firm? Who is authorized and has the responsibility to make corrective actions? Give me your organizational chart. Again, what products are made here? What problems have you had? Have you had any recalls? Have you submitted any field alert reports? All of those are general questions that are normally asked during an on-site visit. And this staff manual guide describes how the request for these very similar records would be handled remotely. And that's what we're talking about, doing a remote request for records. The investigators are unable to do an on-site visit, so they're requesting documents and kind of asking the same questions that they would in lieu of being on site. So, you know, with pre-approvals, you know, the three things that I always used to, you know, request would be the product development report, the validation protocol, and any and all correspondence with the center regarding the application. So I wanted to see and I wanted to know all of what was being talked about, you know, prior to me as a field investigator going out to do that inspection. You know, 50% of the inspection would be done at those times in headquarters, and then the other 50% we used to say would be the field. You know, so those are common questions, and I would suspect that they wouldn't change.
As a long-term inspector, let me ask you this, Joe. I mean, you and I both know you show up, we're going to do a pre-approval. Invariably, you know, the firm has a team of people that they've queued up. You know, they're ready because they have pretty good sense. I could see, you know, in their situation, they're all remote workers and all the rest of the stuff. I could see this becoming a little bit cumbersome. I mean, my sense is, you know, I mean, think of the misunderstanding around, you know, what a term, I mean, how many times have we talked about the term for a development report? Well, yeah, what exactly do you mean? Do you mean the early development? Do you mean late development? You mean, you know, what do you think, Joe? I mean, you've been down the road many times. Do you perceive that this is going to be straightforward, or?
You're absolutely hitting on topics that, you know, we could talk for hours about, because, you know, every company has similar terms. In my experience, sometimes miscommunication could happen. If a firm did receive a 4003 request for records and had questions, there's nothing preventing them with corresponding via email and trying to clarify that question as well. So, you know, it's a situation that's not ideal, but it's the best that the agency can do in the situation that they're in, without sending people to these sites. You know, and I understand the reasoning why. You know, they don't want the possibility of perhaps an investigator infecting somebody. You know, that type of thing. So they're being cautious, as everybody should be cautious, and you know, you kind of have to do the best you can. So I would advise in times where there's a possibility of miscommunication to reach out and ask that question.
Okay, and just off the top, I mean, when you say reach out, are we talking about telephone communication, email?
Well, the 4003 would be sent to most likely the last person that was on the last inspection that occurred at that facility, right? Each facility has a unique FEI number, and each inspection has a report, right? Whether it's NAI, VAI, or OAI, a report is generated after every inspection. And in that report is the most responsible person listed, and as well as if that person wasn't available, the person who had the authority to accept the 42 during that inspection on behalf of the most responsible person. So whoever that is, the agency has their contact information, and the 4003 would likely go to that person listed in the last inspection as the contact for that site. So upon receipt of the 4003, you know, you'll have the email address of the requester of the documents, and having that, you'll be able to communicate with the agency that way.
And again, I'm you know, I'm not saying, I'm sure I'm telling you stuff you know very well. You and I both know there's usually one you know, you have a compliance person from the firm, and you have the inspector in this, and they usually sort these things out. That communication is usually expedited because you're sitting across the table from each other. In this particular case, it's going to be, I'm in East Hanover, you're in wherever. So are we saying can it be by phone, or is that, I would imagine that could be problematic. I mean, all I'm saying is, you know, it's not always documentation. I got to prove what I asked you. What I'm saying is just the pragmatic approaches. How do you move this stuff along if it's a misunderstanding? You just pick up the phone. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, this is not a teleconference inspection. This staff manual guide makes it very clear that this is a request for records, and you are to fulfill this request within 15 days. I think I said 14 days before, within 15 calendar days. And if you're unable to do so, if you're unable to submit these requested documents, you need to tell us why, or tell the agency why. Sometimes I say us because after working there for 21 years, sometimes it slips. This isn't an open dialogue inspection. This is a request for records. And my recommendation would be to answer those requests as you would if the investigator was across the table from you and asked for the organizational chart of your facility. What would you give them? You would give them your organizational chart, a list of products manufactured, give them the list, a list of investigations since the last inspection, give them that list. So, it's kind of pretty straightforward, but there is no dialogue the way that you would normally have a face-to-face dialogue, which makes it different. I don't know if it's better, I don't know if it's worse, but it certainly is different, Russ.
Well, let me take a stab at this. I would suspect, having spent many years at Novartis, for example, in my past life, we strove for the documentation to stand on its own. In other words, if you picked it up, you should be able to track, understand, and see the pieces. Okay, that was a goal. Right, it should be self-explanatory. On the reverse side of that, Joe, I got a feeling that that's not a goal for many places. And I could see where this is going to become somewhat problematic. That's all I'm saying, Joe. I think it's going to be somewhat problematic. And I think them 15 days are going to become 50 days by the time we figure out what it is we're getting, right?
Yep. And you're right on, and that's what the agency faces every day. There's such a wide variability in the abilities of each of these facilities that it does make it hard. And, you have some companies that'll do 20 demonstration batches, whereas other ones are trying to make digoxin in a cement mixer. That's what we're talking about here. That's the disparity. And,
right.
and when you run into these, situations, like I said before, each one is different and needs to be handled differently. And as I said, there'll be a way to correspond. If a firm has questions that they need to ask, they can do that. But certainly, I wouldn't see this as a series of phone calls. This is a request for records, and failure to submit the records will deem your product to be adulterated. And in the request, it'll say that. Actually, it'll say may cause your product to be adulterated within the meaning of 501J. That wording will be on the request. So, like I said, it's not easy, but and it's certainly different. And we'll see how well it plays.
Yeah. I perceive that the terminology is going to be a bit of a stumbling block. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, several addendums to SUPAC were required just to figure out what piece of equipment somebody was talking about.
Absolutely.
That's kind of where I'm at. So I give you guys, I give the agency a lot of credit. But what would you perceive? Do you think it's, again, just not trying to put you on the spot, Joe. I mean, what do you perceive as we start to wind back to what was perceived as relatively normal? What would be your guess? Do you think we're going to go on?
Yeah, my guess is that you're going to see the inspections and sample collections start to come back slowly, certainly on a risk-based approach. All of these documents that you're going to submit with this request for records they're uploaded into what the agency uses, the case management system. They used to use the field accomplishment and case tracking system, FACS. Now they use the case management system, which, you know, is a tool that the agency has to review these records. And certainly people down in headquarters as well as the field can review the same documents once they're uploaded. So I believe the agency has made great strides in streamlining their processes. And you know, I have a great deal of respect for the agency, as you know. But you know, these are different times, and the agency's goal is to keep good products on the market and get bad products off the market when needed. But it's hard to say, Russ. It's different.
It's definitely different. I mean, I see, just based on this 30 minutes we spoke right now. I mean, GDUFA, JDUFA, you know, these things are sitting there. They're required. They got a deadline. The clock's ticking. Obviously, most firms, although maybe a bit slower, are still making submissions. You know, filings are still being made, which tells me there's got to be 4,003 requests going out all the time. So, I mean, my guess is this isn't gonna change. If anything else, I think it's probably going to put a greater strain. And as you noted, most of the health, you know, most of the commissioned officers or people that are in the public health service have been redeployed. So I assume that they're suffering from a headcount problem as well. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right. And you know, you got to remember that there's opportunistic people that try to take advantage of situations. And I mentioned the increase in the number of warning letters to facilities that have unapproved and misbranded drugs. I'll just read one to you. This was posted and issued on June 10th, and it was to a firm. And this is kind of what a sample of what the agency is doing. This is to advise you that the United States Food and Drug Administration and the Federal Trade Commission reviewed your websites at the internet addresses www. I'll just say XYZ. We also reviewed your social media website at www.xyz, where you direct consumers to your website to purchase your products. The FDA has observed that your website offers blank products for sale in the United States, and that these products are intended to mitigate, prevent, treat, diagnose, or cure COVID-19, right? There's a lot of those warning letters, right, sent out within the last couple of months to facilities that are trying to make a buck, for lack of a better. So the agency has a great responsibility. You know, they're trying to make sure that nobody gets hurt, right? We have a process here that's the best in the world for approving drugs, and they're doing everything that they can and using the tools that are afforded to them by Congress to make sure that we maintain that level of integrity in our drug supply. So that's just an example. And you, certainly, I'm not telling you anything or reading anything that you can't read by yourself by going to www.fda.gov and doing a proper search.
Oh yeah, during this time I've been shocked at how many old product resurrections we've seen, and they're absolutely positively a sure cure. Yeah, as a long-term person in the development area, and like yourself in regulatory, I find it, shall we say, shocking as well as ridiculous. But yeah, I'm glad that and the point here is, and I think for our listeners here, I think what's happening, I mean, we're not just talking about, you know, that the inspections are still ongoing. There's options. There's a risk factor. Again, the FDA is ongoing. I mean, they got the labs going. They're also monitoring some of the nonsense that's being perpetrated on the public. These magical cures for old-time medications, which in certain cases are downright dangerous, as we know. But I mean, the point is, other than the stuff that finally hits the media, what Joseph is saying here, I think, is key, Joe. I mean, the FDA is monitoring these sites. So,
yes.
And that's got to increase the workload, Joe. I mean, there's got to be a lot more of that going on now than before.
Yeah, it certainly does, Russ. And I've known you for a long time. You know, both of my brothers are pharmacists. My sister's a pharmacist. My wife is a pharmacist. My brother-in-law is a pharmacist. We see firsthand, you know, on the lines how this affects people, and certainly none of us want to see anybody get hurt, and certainly not by an unscrupulous, firm trying to make a buck off of this. So you're right. You're right on. And that's part of the job when you go to work for the FDA. Yeah, that's what you sign up for.
Absolutely. So, Joe, I think it's important that we kind of recap, and but because we're going to try to package this up. And I think since this virtual conversation that we have is going to be looked even more as a resource, you know, as you know, we post these up on the READ site. But I think what's key here is that this conversation contains a lot of vital information, and I think we got to recap. And I think we should start from the top again and just kind of make the bullet points. So you're getting ready. You're going to file a new compound. You're going to file a new medication. You're going to make a new filing. You got to make a submission. The point there is the firm, the sponsor, they should be looking at Guide 9004.1. Correct?
That's the staff manual guide. It's the policy and procedure for requesting records in advance of or in lieu of an inspection. And you can find that staff manual guide by going to the FDA website, clicking on the search button, typing in 9004.1, and it'll pop up right in front. I think it's 8 pages, and it'll tell you all about the agency's policy and procedure for requesting records in advance of or in lieu of an inspection.
And just so that we have it, I mean, the staff manual itself is very informative. It talks about actions, timelines, confirmation of receipts, and requests. And based on that, you will see reference to the number document that Joseph has mentioned a few times, which is 4003. Just out of curiosity, Joe and I had gone through this, and when I went in, the 4003 that you actually get, Joseph, is the recognition, or the what they call the confirmation of receipt. It's not actually the document that is sent.
Yeah, I think you saw the 4003A form, which is the confirmation that the agency has received the documents that were requested. The actual request for documents comes on form 4003, and that would be a series of questions. You know, like I said before, you know, please submit you know, a copy of your organizational chart. Please submit a copy of the the name and address of the most responsible person at this facility. Those types of questions.
Mm-hmm. And just for clarity, the 4003A, what that you get, you can see that. You know, this people, because the 4003, which is used by the inspection divisions, is not available. That was misunderstanding, at least I had. Just to be so our listeners are clear on that. Right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Now, given that, I mean, we're talking about 15 calendar days turnaround, and the initiation and the durations are outlined in very good detail in the staff manuals. Just for confirmation, I think clarity is going to be the foremost, Joe. And I think you got to repeat yourself again, and that is during your years of inspection, misunderstandings seem to be paramount between what I call terminology and what you call terminology. And I think it's imperative that you know, it's not going to be a simple conversation here. So what would be, again, what you confirm for our folks on that one, Joe?
Yeah, perhaps there could be some situations where clarity is needed, but when the question is asked, you know, please provide a list of the products that you manufacture, that's pretty clear.
Yes.
You know, please provide a copy of your organizational chart. That's pretty clear. Please provide a copy of you know, any laboratory investigations. That's pretty clear. Please provide you know, whatever it is. You know, those are common questions that are asked across the table when an on-site inspection is being conducted, and those should be anticipated if you do get this request for records, and you should answer that question the way you would normally answer it, as if they were across the table. And if there's any need for clarity, you would have the email address of the requester, where you could reach out to them and request clarity for a particular question.
So even if I did something like changes being affected, that would be something that would be handled in this manner too?
Well, it would depend. You know, that type of question could be asked. You know, give me a list of all changes being effective, or, you know, the agency would have all of that information, but certainly they could ask for that.
Okay. Well, Joe, I think we've covered up pretty much detail. I mean, the PDUFA stuff sitting out there, the GDUFA stuff, the warning letters. I mean, sounds to me like we're burning the midnight oil there, work from home. I have had some personal experience where I was, one of our clients had made a request, and I actually seen the response from the center that afternoon. So they're on their game. They're not, you know, they're moving along. And as always, Joe, I think it's been informative. I think I appreciate your time. And as usual, every year, I want to thank you for bringing us up to date. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Russ, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.